my name is Cassie Knable, formerly Cassie Cheehorse, if we've ever worked together before. I'm here to really talk to you about the power of one report and how everybody that's sitting and listening into this webinar today can really help work with Washington State Department of Agriculture, your neighbors, really work to protect our landscapes from all the different invasives that we've heard about today. So when you think about the State Department of Agriculture and you think about growing and farming, you have to think about pests. I work within this specific niche called the Pest Program, where we're most famous for the murder hornet saga, but really there is a group of dedicated individuals working to protect our landscapes from the invasive species that could harm it. You'll see collections, lifetimes in and out of the field. They'll actually look at plants, looking at the eDNA to see if insects have been there. A lot of work into educating and teaching people what to be on the lookout for, removing invasives through labor, really cool, cutting, innovative research. And then most of the time when we talk to you and when you hear from us is when we're working on eradications. So one of the stories I'm going to tell you a little bit about is of the northern giant hornet. Northern giant hornet popped up in Blaine, December 2019. Since then has actually been eradicated from Washington State. So we removed 3 nests, all from Whatcom County. It's up by Canada. So haven't seen anything since 2021. So they are considered eradicated. So it's a really cool story that I can show how we were successful. And it kind of started off with Asian giant hornet invasions threatened honeybees in the Pacific Northwest. They were detected at WSCA. We started responding and looking into it. This is probably when you first heard about it and the first headline hit mainstream. And then throughout the winter into the spring, the next headline came out with the title of Murder Hornets in the U.S., the rush to stop the Asian giant hornet. Okay. So I'll go through a couple different names here. We now defer to them as northern giant hornets, but you'll know them as murder hornets. And it quickly became sensationalized. You really started to care. Here's a great example of how it spread. Oh, I don't think I did share my sound. So let me try this again. Or I don't think you guys are going to hear me. Okay.
For the New York Times story, I think had about 1,200 people in it. And a week later, after the New York Times story broke, there were 5,000 people in it. Social media did play a role actually in detecting Asian giant hornet. We had at least one report that I know of that was submitted directly through social media. It's not our ideal.
So this really became So it really became wide, and we quickly had to teach you that the murder hornet isn't going to murder you, but what it's really after are potentially our honeybees. And they're really great at specializing and coming up to the bee boxes. The honeybees fly out to protect themselves, and then they are capable of systematically chopping off every bee's head, dropping their bodies, and quickly wiping them out. In addition to that, we heard Carlos talk about native bees. We have to think about other insects and things that can pollinate and just our diversity we have. Typically, what the hornets do is they fly around and they hunt and they grab different insects and they smash them up into pellets and take them back to feed their young, as you can see in the pellets located here. So we can't have these in Washington at all, and our goal is to eradicate them. And we at work at WSCA started to think, well, how can we do that? And we went to researchers overseas to see what they were doing. To locate northern giant hornets, they were creating these bottle traps. And it has a mixture in the trap that the hornets, as they're out hunting and looking for food, they're attracted to it, and they'll eventually fly in the trap, and then we can capture a northern giant hornet. And we said, oh, that is something that we can use here. So we went to work making these traps.
Homeowner's door. I was chatting with them, telling them that I was going to be putting up a live trap and that we'd be checking it. She goes, oh, I saw one of those on our camera above our door. I'm like, really? So she showed me the still photo of it. And I'm like going, yep, that's the Asian giant hornet. Here is a homeowner who has a little webcam above her back door, and the Asian giant hornet was right on their webcam.
So we're trapping for the hornets, we're working with landowners, and we're maybe catching one or two, but our goal is really to reach that eradication. We have this media sensation, but how is it going to help us find them all? And if you think about locating and removing, I need to find what these hornets are going into, which is going to be the nest. So with what we know that the public has interest, we know how to locate one or two, let's lean into that and see how it can help us get closer to eradication or finding that nest.
I have a lariat. I can throw a rope around one of them's neck and drag it in with my horse.
This kind of public involvement is completely unprecedented for our program. I have not worked with anything like this before. We're just a handful of people, mostly based in Olympia. And what we really need is eyes everywhere. And the public really stepped forward and provided us with that. And I am extremely grateful.
So we took that trapping and that public involvement, and eventually we even led to a successful program asking residents in Washington, if you can help us gain these items to make these traps, please do. So if you see the map on my right, you can see how over 700 residents in Washington are responding, in addition to the thousands of reports that we're getting in. So it's really everyone's kind of all hands and eyes on deck as we work to stop the northern giant hornet. And eventually what this led to was a successful capture of live hornet. Now, the next thing that we had to do was figure out how are we going to take this live hornet and help us get to the nests. And we led into the work of using these radio tag transmitters. Now, we were very upfront and honest about this. The first time that we tried to tag a hornet and release it, we actually weren't successful. We lost the hornet and had to try again. But after trials and errors, I can say that the team worked very hard and were able to release a hornet and locate the nest within 30 minutes. So using the process of telemetry, they would tromp around the woods and eventually get close enough to see and hear the evidence of hornets coming and going. So through the process of public involvement, using scientific methods, and cutting innovative research, they were able to locate hornets' nests. Now, if you know the background and biology of the hornets that I won't get into, you have the potential of removing a nest and preventing queens from moving forward, which can stop the population. So then the next thing to get to work is figure out, well, how can we safely remove the nests? And we used these fancy spacesuits and modified basically a vacuum to be able to stick a nozzle into the nest and suck out all of the hornets. And fortunately, all the hornets that we found were in a tree. So then we were able to remove the tree, open the nest, remove the contents, freeze any hornets that were viable so that nothing was able to move forward. And then we would have a successful northern giant hornet eradication. But all jokes aside, this type of story is a huge highlight for not only eradications, for people's careers working on this project for WSDA, but really it showcases how residential involvement can help lead to success. So I'm talking to all of you on the screen because we really couldn't do it without you. Here's kind of a recap of what those efforts looked like when we removed that first nest.
I think between queens and larvae and everything, I think there was 500 specimens in there.
But opening up was super exciting. It was also a little nerve-wracking. We didn't expect to see so many living hornets. And so I think our calm plans to just, look at the nest, take pictures of it, measure it, weigh it, pour acid on it and see if it reacts, whatever you would do to make it look sciencey, that kind of went out the window as we found ourselves in this mad rush to ensure that hornets didn't just fly all over the place. Granted, they were cold and they weren't moving very fast and we doused them with carbon dioxide, but you know, you don't want to take chances.
Just the overwhelming feeling of joy that all of the hard work we did for the summer finally paid off.
It would have been a much more disappointing 2020, a year that has already been disappointing for so many reasons, if we hadn't found that nest after all.
Not just a happy moment for 2020. I would have to say this is one of the highlights of the entire career that I've had in entomology.
So we're not looking for hornets these days, but if it happened at once, it could happen again. If you ever happen to see a northern giant hornet, go ahead and take a picture and report it. You can go online to our website, send us an email, or give us a phone call. Now, there's also a yellow-legged hornet in North Carolina and Georgia that's invasive that we're also on the lookout for. So really, anytime that you think you see something out of sorts, go ahead and report it. And I really want us to think about kind of that success that we can have in eradication, and eradication just in general. When I talk about Japanese beetle, the last code word will come up at the end of this presentation. We're talking about Japanese beetle because it's an active, ongoing eradication in Yakima, Benton, Franklin, and King County. And here's a couple of reasons why we don't want Japanese beetle here in Washington. So it lives in a lot of the places in the United States. So a lot of the times when you're on Google and you're looking at videos and stuff, you'll find things that look like this. You'll find recommendations on control. I'm going to show you a couple videos, but think and keep in mind that we still have the chance to eradicate and not have to live with this. Oops, maybe. Oh, cannot play media. Let's play this one.
Japanese beetles destroying a tree. Cherry trees. They seem to particularly like cherry trees. I'm new to East Coast farming, so I gotta deal with these guys. Look, they totally destroyed this cherry over here. This is a goner, probably. How sad. I was away for a week. They weren't here when I left. Putting out the fire. And a new fire of a different kind starting at this orchard. Put out these traps, and the beetles are already flying in there. See them on this tree? I've seen them fly in already.
Having some problems with my videos. I think my computer is just kind of at its max of what it can handle right now, running this webinar. So I apologize, but I'm a little frozen on my screen right now. Let me see if I can get it to pull up. Okay, so let's see if this will play now.
Now let's get some beetles. So we've got them all captured in here. You can see them all in there. Look inside.
This one.
There's a Japanese beetle flying around as soon as I put up this trap. Wow. So after one day, not even 24 hours, all of our Japanese beetle traps are about a third full. We've got 6 of them around the property, and so it's drawing the beetles in. If I would have put these over by our garden or our orchard, we always caught Japanese beetles by the bag full every day. And I think that'll happen eventually here as it starts to draw them in. It's just gonna take a little bit longer because it's more on the outskirts and not near our trees and garden that are more attractive. I think this will be full in the next day or two. These are definitely working. I'm gonna have to figure out a way to either put these in the compost or feed them to the chickens, and I might make a trap to draw these into the chickens also. I've seen people do that and they work really well. So these Japanese beetle traps, as gross as these beetles are, they are doing really well.
So we'll talk about the traps in a little bit. Oops. But really what the adult beetles do is that they don't discriminate. They feed on 300 different types of plants. If it's green and leafy, a bud of a flower, they will typically skeletonize, as you can see in the image here. For everybody that always wants lists, Here's a lot of the common things that we grow here in Washington that you could find Japanese beetle on, also in Oregon. What we've seen in large populations, or I guess in populations just as they're eating, is you can see it here on some roses. Beetles come out by the masses. If you get to look at them closely, they'll tend to resemble the shape of a ladybug, kind of around the same size, but they have a green metallic head and copper wing covers. I like to say about the size of your pinky nail. If you can get a really good look at them, you'll notice little tufts on the side and the tip of its abdomen. We find them skeletonizing or eating flowers infested in them. They love roses. I switched. I'm frozen again. Sorry, guys. Okay, I think we're going to be back on track now. You'll see them. Nope. Okay, let's try this again. It wouldn't be a good webinar if everything went smoothly, right? Okay. I think you can see one picture now. You know, here's them eating some raspberry leaves. And oops. Okay, here you don't see the beetles, but you can see that the destruction that they caused. Here's some eating on a tree leaf. And here's the beetles with some damage in some grape leaves. Now, wherever the beetles are eating, typically what they're doing is they're mating. And when they mate, they make these eggs that they actually go back down to the soil to lay. So throughout the summer, when they're out, they're eating, mating, dropping some eggs. Those eggs will have hatched into larvae or pupae that will move around in the fall. In the winter, they just dig themselves down, come back up in the spring, pupae later, till they hatch out again in the fall. And then that's kind of their life cycle. Here's a pretty typical image that people will share with you. So anywhere from really May to October here is when we could see Japanese beetles. When they're not being the adults causing havoc, they are living as grubs or larvae. Those are going to be in the soil. They're characterized as a white C-shaped grub with a brown tan head and visible legs, anywhere from an 1/8 to an inch long. Now, the thing to note is that a lot of grubs look alike. We really have to have the Japanese beetle larva up from this up, and we have to look at it underneath a microscope to determine exactly what it is. In places, especially in Western Washington, they have a European Schaefer grub, which is causing some damage. It looks very similar to Japanese beetle. So what they do, though, is they will be in the soil. They love to eat grass roots. Our ornamental vegetation is going to be kind of their preferred habitat. And basically, the way we have our nicely manicured lawns, these are really good buffets for the grubs to get into and them to just kind of go wild. Think about your golf course, your school, your church. You'll see brown patches where no matter how much you water, it just won't turn green. In some cases, you can pull it up like carpet. And then where you have a bunch of these larvae, you're going to invite critters, rodents, crows, etc. to come in and kind of dig that up even further. So one of the cool things that WSDA does is we actually offer free treatments to private and public properties near Japanese beetle detections. So this is a way that we work to eradicate or completely remove the beetle by having annual treatments going on, but it's also one of the things that helps mitigate that risk of destruction to the landowners. So when we think about Japanese beetle grubs or larvae, and where we'll find them, we know that we'll find them in the soil, but when we'll find them in the soil is actually kind of all year round. And this is important to think about because if I take infested soil and I move it, then I'm going to be spreading Japanese beetle. It's kind of the same thing with a potted plant. If beetles are eating and then they dropped eggs and, I have that out on my porch and then I move, I could be spreading Japanese beetle. So they're a pretty good hitchhiker below the surface. Then when I think about the adults being out, well, that's less time. It's really only in the summer I need to worry about the adults and things above the ground. But that's when we're outside doing everything. I'm trimming my trees, I'm mowing my lawn, buying cut flowers, and it's really when we're working in our ag fields too. So moving yard waste or moving field waste, if it's infested, could spread Japanese beetle. WSDA is working to eradicate or completely remove through trapping, treating, and quarantine. All of these efforts combined work to help us reach the eradication. Now, trapping is an integrated pest management tool, and it has a couple cool features to it. So traps come in different shapes and sizes. A lot of the times, especially where Japanese beetle is present, they're used to control and detect Japanese beetle. So they have a pheromone lure at the top where the beetles fly up to the trap, they get captured and die. So a lot of the times you'll see videos that are a little dramatic and look like this because it's actually what people live with. So the traps are super selective. The beetles are definitely drawn to the traps. They don't draw the beetles in from miles around, but if they're present in that area, they're going to end up in the traps. So they're really good defense for WSCA for us to be able to locate and see if we have Japanese beetle. So here's a map of Washington and where we placed traps. Last year in 2025, we placed 11,000 across the state to monitor for introductions. And we've caught Japanese beetle. So over here in the lower Yakima Valley into the Tri-Cities, we've been actually working to eradicate for a couple years now, really since 2021, since they were first detected in 2020, and we captured over 72,000 beetles. So what we do then is we actually go in and we put even more traps out, sometimes almost upwards of 50 traps per square mile, because we also use it as a tool to help us catch the beetles so they're not laying as many eggs. So all these white dots here are, you can see where we place traps from Yakima into the Tri-Cities. Here's where we caught beetles. Now, if I flip back to the map, you're going to see catches over in Western Washington too, and this is going to be in the South King County area by SeaTac. We place traps all the way from Canada to Oregon, but they get really heavy where we've detected beetles. And anybody that's watching, this trap data is available for you. So you can actually go online to our website and you can see beetle detections in real time. So you can scan the QR code to take you there, or from the home page, you want to scroll down till you see the box that says detections. And when you click on that, you can look at past data, but this year's detection map is linked right there. You can scroll around to see if we caught Japanese beetles near you. Now, right now, it's going to show you last year's catches, remember, because the adults aren't out yet. But as we move into June and July and we're getting ready to catch beetles this year, you can get on and see if they've been found near you. So trapping's great. It helps us learn where the beetles are, and it also helps us keep them from laying as many eggs. But really, what gets us to the point of the eradication is going to be our next slide on treatments. We use that trapping data to help us inform of where our treatments need to happen. We offer free treatments to landowners. They just have to sign up with us, and it happens near Japanese beetle detection. So we use acelepryn, which has an active ingredient of chloranthropinol, and it's considered, EPA classifies it as a low risk because it has a good safety record. What it does is it gets into the soil and it targets those grubs, right? So as the adults are out and they are mating and laying eggs, the grubs are able to, if they try to eat those grass roots, they're impacted. So that's why we offer these annual treatments to landowners on a continual basis, because this is what's going to help us reach that tool of eradication. We have more information for this on our webpage. Department of Health has been tracking this and has no cases of illness reported in Washington as well. So trapping, treating, and sometimes we quarantine. When I showed you those pictures of how Japanese beetle spreads, we think about using that in terms of helping us prevent moving Japanese beetle to new areas. So here's an actual quarantine that's in place in the lower valley. I have an imaginary orange boundary, and I can say Japanese beetle lives in there because that's where I've caught it. And on the outskirt, we don't have Japanese beetle yet. So I'm going to say the rule says that I shouldn't move things out of that area that are going to spread Japanese beetle. This will help us work on keeping it here, preventing the spread, and then tackling those treatments there. We'll work behind the scenes with landowners and different growers and stuff so that they can mitigate the risks of spreading Japanese beetle to new areas, but still being able to work and do their job. So when you think about the idea of this quarantine and preventing the spread, we kind of flip over to a federal level where there's this big guidebook called the U.S. Domestic Japanese Beetle Harmonization Plan. And this is kind of the book that dictates what states can and cannot do, including Canada, based off categories. Now, most people, you want to be number one. So we want to live in a category 1 status. I mentioned that Japanese beetles is in the United States over in the East Coast. Their category is not 1. They're in like a 3 or a 4. Over here in Washington, we are category 1, which is where we want to stay. If we fail to eradicate Japanese beetle, we could lose our category status. And basically, what that tells, if you look at the map, all the states around us now know that we have Japanese beetle. So now we have to do X, Y, and Z before goods can move out, or maybe they'll go other places to find things. So aside from the actual destruction the beetles cause, it could have some economic factors that follow it. Those things could impact, just you working in the area if you're living inside a quarantine, or maybe a landscaper that comes to your house, and it could impact farmers, growers, and our nurseries as well. So that's kind of the background and the basics that I have for you on Japanese beetle. But you can go ahead and learn more about it and actually stay connected to the project. If you go to our website, there's a section where you can sign up for updates. And about every month or every other month, we send an email blast out that gives you updates on the projects, different things that are going on, ways to stay connected, and how you can help. We also run and manage a Facebook group, which is really great for you to get into, especially if you want to help promote that idea of eradication and us removing Japanese beetle. Now, if you ever suspect to see a Japanese beetle, go ahead and take a picture. And then what you can do is you can go ahead and send that picture to us online or via email. So that's the basic that I have for you on Japanese beetle. We can always go deeper. There's always more to talk and always more to say. But if we have any questions on Japanese beetle, now is a good time. And then we'll flip into the very end of our day and finish off with the last code word.
Cassie, I just wanted to add one more thing about Japanese beetle. For people that live in those treatment areas, either in Western or Eastern Washington that we have this year, we are really struggling with getting consents to treat those properties. And we have to have consent to enter your property and treat it for Japanese beetle. It's a free treatment. It's a reduced risk insecticide. And if we are not able to get more people to consent to have their property treated, we are not going to get rid of Japanese beetle. Thus far, we've been getting less than half of properties to give consent, and that clearly has not been enough to eradicate the beetles. So my plea to you is, if you live in that area or work in that area, if you can please work to encourage your friends and your neighbors to submit those consent forms. Like I mentioned, it's free. They're just, as the video kind of showed, they just go on, they spray your lawn, they're out of there. It's, you know, very low inconvenience for folks. And we could make a serious impact this year if we really get more consents, but we're really at a tipping point. I fear that if we don't get more people to consent, this is going to grow out of possible eradication, and we will lose that Category 1 status that that Cassie mentioned. So this is my plea to you, to encourage your friends and neighbors, and if you see people, you know, posting about it on social media, which we have seen, it's way more effective to hear from their neighbors than from quote unquote the government, to encourage people to give consent for treatment. So I would like to ask your help and encourage you to encourage others to get their property treated, and you know, get their neighborhood to get it treated. And we do get legitimate questions, people saying, you know, well, okay, well, I signed up for getting my property treated, but my neighbor didn't. So what good is that? So, and in a sense, they're right, because if your neighbor does not get treated, their ground becomes a you know, potential haven, a breeding ground for Japanese beetles. So it's something we really have to pull all together to be able to eradicate this beetle, just like people did for the hornets. I think, you know, that was a scarier pest, I guess. And so people really sort of rallied around it. But Japanese beetle is posing a much more serious threat to agriculture in our state, and the quarantines and things that are likely to, I mean, we already have an internal quarantine for part around Grandview, but it's going to make it very challenging, and both homeowners and farmers will have increased pesticide costs, etc. Farmers will have a hard time moving their crops across quarantine lines. There's a lot of serious implications, and we're really at a tipping point where we need people to give consent. So, okay, I'm done begging. But anything that people can do to help us get those consents, we would be very grateful. We would much rather, we do technically have legal actions that we could take, but we would much rather convince people that this is a good thing than start taking people to court, and it could become very expensive. So that is all I wanted to say about that.
Yes, lovely, Carla. We love to hear it. So when she's talking about consent forms, I'll just show you a quick example. Everybody gets a letter to their mailbox. No, I won't. I will try to show you. Yeah. I'm frozen. I'm really frozen this time.
What are you trying to show?
The rest of my PowerPoint, but I think I okay. I got the slideshow to end. I'll just try again. Okay. Just to like show you guys what we're talking about, residents get a letter, and then, okay, I'm really never going to show this. Okay, let's just go. I can pull this up. Okay. So if you have any ways that you think that you could help with Japanese beetle, go ahead and like put it in the chat box. Maybe we can get some ideas going. People can chat. I saw a message in there about wanting to have a talk, and that's a great way that you can have us come in and we can help engage and teach people that it could possibly affect. or everything that Carla mentioned. So here's also some good contact information if you wanted to reach out to us about the Japanese beetle program, or just contact Carla and I'll put my information in the chat box at the end. But because my PowerPoint keeps freezing, and we have about 15 minutes before we round this out and we offer the last code word, Japanese beetle is an ongoing eradication. We really want to work to eradicate it. We don't want to live with it like the people in the videos. And really the way that we're going to get there is through those annual treatments over and over. When you get online and Google, there's lots of stuff that you'll hear about really mitigating the risks and kind of living with it. And we really want to push the effort to eradicate. So while all efforts are great, we really want to get there. There's a comment in there about many chickens for the beetles. If everybody, you know, owned 100 chickens at their house, there might be a chance. But to kind of wrap us up and talk about another eradication program that's been going strong is this spongy moth program. And from 1974 to 2024 was the 100-year mark of keeping spongy moth out of Washington state, right? So now we're actually on a 26-year benchmark of protecting our state from this establishing. So again, eradication can be successful when everybody works together. What the program typically does is they focus on this statewide trapping, sometimes setting upwards of 16,000 traps to monitor for spongy moth introductions and treat if necessary. So if you've ever seen those green traps, much like what is in his hand, especially over here in Western Washington, that's what you're finding. Last year, we trapped 22 spongy moths in 2 prior known locations. What we're protecting from happening here in Washington is this widespread defoliation. So they live in the East Coast and they are ravenous feeders in their caterpillar form, and they can wipe out swaths of trees as you see here. They started in about the 1900s and since then have spread halfway across the state. These places in the East Coast, they have to live with spongy moth. They won't be able to eradicate it, much like Japanese beetle. But, you know, over here in Washington, where it's not yet established, we can prevent and work to keeping it out. So you might ask, well, how do they spread all the way from the East Coast to us? And one of the spongy moths will spread in your egg masses. It lays it on any outdoor surface. And then as people move and recreate and they relocate over here in Washington, they bring egg masses with us, which hatch out into the caterpillars. Now, there's other vessels and ways that spongy moth can get here from overseas and exports too. But this is a big vector of how we, people sitting in this webinar, will spread it around. So when those egg masses are laid and they hatch out these caterpillars, they cause that severe defoliation. They're vast feeders, and trees will appear to have lost their leaves like they do in winter, but it's going to be spring. So we would walk outside and see no green. Now, trees can grow back, but after this happening year after year, the tree is going to be weakened and it's going to die. I don't have too much more to say about spongy moth, but we do have this short YouTube video. It's about 8 minutes. It's called Spongy Moth, A Nightmare for Trees and You. You can actually go to this link and find it on our YouTube channel to watch more. So
Cassie, are you there or are you frozen? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's been a long day for my laptop and it's not happy with me. So if there's any questions on spongy moth, Japanese beetle, go ahead and post them in the chat box. I saw a question in here about any word on whether ODA is finding more funding for the eradication efforts, or will they be moving to category 2? And so
And if
the
you're
Oregon
online, can you take that one?
Yeah, I can take that. Hi, I'm Sven Spieshiger. I'm the state plant regulatory official for Washington State Department of Agriculture. My counterpart in Oregon did put up a very good fight with legislature, but they did defund the program. And unfortunately, since they will no longer have statewide trapping in Oregon, by the rules of the Japanese beetle harmonization plan, they can no longer remain as a Category 1 state. And there is a board with a committee with a national plant board, which is a body made up of all 50 states that basically decide what sorts of rules govern the movements of plants from state to state. And that subcommittee will likely vote to reduce them to a Category 2. And what that means is it will be on individual industries to prove that their plants are free from Japanese beetle before shipping out. So it's going to be a pretty major cost to them. But yeah, unfortunately, that's where it is for now. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I believe it does. The one thing too that I do want to mention is states have been successful in eradicating Japanese beetle. You can look at success stories out of Idaho and out of California as well. And Oregon, you know, they got pretty close before, unfortunately, as Sven mentioned, a change in funding happened. So again, our ploy on Japanese beetle, if there's something that you want to do to help us reach the eradication, we'd love to collaborate. We'd love to work with you.